Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll be so kind, please take a look at the screen right here. For those of you who don't know, that is United States Poet Laureate Juan Felipe Herrera. Last year, he gave an interview and was asked about what role he felt poetry could play in today's world. His response was that through the craft, we can still ourselves and find inner peace and deep reflection. That ain't too shabby. To state the obvious, the world we both know and reside in is constantly changing. Old norms have been and continue to be supplanted by new ones. For instance, if you were to say to someone from this generation that has recently come of age, snail mail, most likely they would have no idea what you're talking about. But you have to understand that they've grown up with email being standard in their lives. Also, that same generation will most likely never know what it's like to walk into a video store because what are those? Grab a big clunky box, flip it over, and see what the movie's about. Now, films can be streamed directly to televisions and mobile devices, or for the more adventurous of us, they can be rented through Redbox. What's interesting about this shift is that it has largely involved the removal of the human elements. You can now purchase food, clothes, entertainment, medicine, and more without ever having to interact with another living soul. On one hand, this means that having our needs met has become astronomically more convenient. But on the other, it means that our society has become increasingly more spread apart. And as a result, intimacy and vulnerability have become frightening words and concepts. One of the things that I love about poetry is that it forces both the writer and the audience, be it someone at home reading a poem or in the crowd at a slam or an open mic, to truly invest, to come a little bit closer, to dwell in both the intimate and the vulnerable. I want to try something real fast just to kind of gauge where we're at. So hopefully you guys are with it. How many people would believe me if I said that words have power? Good, you guys were ready for that one. I think we can all agree that words have the ability to hurt, to empower, to start in wars, to yield understanding, etc. How many people would believe me if I said that poetry has the ability to change lives? It's because I'm here watching you guys. There'll be far fewer hands up. I'm a little bit biased on this one because poetry has and continues to change my life. See, I started writing when I was in high school to woo a girl, which never works, by the way, just in case you were wondering. It's not happening. But she was gorgeous. My freshman year was her senior year, and I lacked the confidence at the time to just casually introduce myself to her or to pay her a compliment. So I started writing these poems in secret. I never mustered up the courage to actually give any of them to her, though, but even then, poetry offered me a voice as well as a means to understand and articulate the world that I was experiencing. As I grew older, it also became a way for me to make my peace with the harsher things that I'd experienced or was currently encountering. For example, in the year of our Lord 2010, I was at a little diner having a man talk with one of my dear friends about growing up in the South. Now, my friend is white. If you have not noticed by now, I am not. And it was interesting to dialogue about the similarities of our experiences as well as the stark differences. I told him a story about another girl I went to high school with, and when we parted ways, I went home, and I mused on what I'd shared with him as well as the emotions that surprisingly got called back up. And I did then what I'd done so many times before and since. I wrote a poem about it. When my friend heard it, he hated it. He didn't hate the poem. He hated that I had to live through the events that served as a catalyst for it. I'd like to share that piece with you right now. This is called Acceptance. After an absence of 7 years, I find my first love and learn that she is now a mother. And it is strange to think that she has held a life in the dark hands of her womb. No longer is she the girl smiling in the photographs perched along my bedroom wall. After an absence of 7 years, it is as if our mouths never abandoned the melody of each other's names, and I'm hearing her full, rich laugh anew. Through the course of our conversation, we both choose to keep the sweetness present. We have unconsciously agreed not to wade into our bruised history. We do not speak of what we have both lived through together, but it is still alive and lying atop our veins. I do not have far to reach to remember the sting of the word nigger, tumbling like hail out of her father's lips toward me. I can still remember her eyes shining like soft moons in the dark as she asked me to leave her 17th birthday party so that her parents would not know that I had come to celebrate her honor. I can still remember how often I clasped my hands and prayed for God to grant me a different world to wake to instead of this hungry South, whose pride and tradition towered like a grim juggernaut of a choice. As she stands before me, happy, beaming like the new morning with her infant asleep in her arms, I realize that both distance and time are the midwives of acceptance, and though I doubt our tongues will ever admit it, I know that we have made our peace with who we were all those years ago, when we were as vulnerable as thin ice, and only just learning the true weight contained in our care for one another, when we both came to know that I had the heart to love her, just not the skin. Thank you. Thank you. So I started performing on May 25th, 2001. Some of the major themes that I touch on in my work deal with race, how we treat each other in society, and love falling apart. All of my poems aren't autobiographical, and during the course of a performance, I have the opportunity to explore different voices and characters. However, the biggest responses that I've received for the past few years have come from poems that I've actually lived. Pieces that derive from failed expectations, or reminders that the South is still very much the South in many ways, or nights that wouldn't permit me to go to sleep, which is a pretty frequent thing for me, actually. Usually when I perform long sets that last for at least 30 minutes, someone in the audience will cry, and it has always, always, always been immensely humbling. So many people have approached me after shows over the years and thanked me for giving voice to their experience. I've encountered so many people who've offered me huge hugs, regardless of how sweaty I've been, and then turned around and told me about how they were raped and were too afraid to tell anybody, or how racism threatened to break their spirits, or how rewarding it feels to have someone talk about how they've been mistreated due to the God that they pray to, or perhaps don't even believe in, or even who they choose to love. My life as a poet has shown me many things, more things than I could ever hope to cover in a forum like this, but to mention a few, more and more each year, I'm not only reminded of just how much power words have, but that poetry in particular has the ability to bring people from different walks of life together. It also has the ability to make you realize that your pain, depression, and loneliness are not solely yours. They do not solely belong to you. By facing your darkness, writing it down, sculpting it into a poem, and maybe even lending your voice to it behind the microphone, you can transform yourself. You can heal yourself on stage in the moment in front of largely strangers who've experienced similar things in their paths. There's real strength in being able to understand your pain, how and why it has hurt you, and perhaps even how you've kept it close to you and carried it with you on your journey. I believe that poetry is such an effective means of doing this because the act of writing it, of manifesting these words, is much like prayer or meditation. It slows time down, allows you to step outside of yourself and focus on where you've been as well as what you would like to convey. So many people have said over the years that poetry is too hard to understand or that it's too highbrow and academic. They don't feel that it has any real punch or plays any significant role in their lives. But where do we turn to, say, around Valentine's Day when we want to show somebody that we care? Or at any point during the year when heartbreak is set upon us? Often we search for words and affirmations to center us as well as motivate us to keep going. We tend to turn to poetry. To quote Tiny Buddha, which I don't like to refer to as a self-help website, even though it helps self, if that makes sense. Your needs and wants matter. By taking care of yourself, you're in a better position to help others. One of the greatest gifts I've received over the past 7 years is that I've been able to help other writers find and develop their voices through the open mics I've helmed, the shows I've produced, and most recently, this past summer where I taught spoken word and creative writing to a group of 24 teenagers. Go, young people. A few years ago, I released a record called Between Beauty and Bedlam. I wanted to give the listener an album's worth of experience and emotion on 6 tracks, which meant that I had to dig really deep inside to pull the material that I wanted to present to the world out. The first piece on that record will be the last thing I leave you with today. Now, because the project was so personal and, as fate would have it, because I was going through the deepest depression I'd known at that point while making it, I wanted to have something that would serve as an affirmation for me if no one else. Something that would serve as a reminder of the things that I'd survived and overcome, as well as a challenge to always be thankful for the journey, perspective, and spirit that this craft has given me. During my record release show, my band and I kicked our set off by performing it. And at the halfway point of the piece, I looked out into the crowd, and I could see a woman in the back crying. I had this great sense of awe that not only something that I'd lived, but something that I'd scribbled onto the face of hotel stationery and gave my voice to had served to join the two of us right then and there. One of my favorite artists is an MC from Minnesota called Brother Ali. And he says on his song, Us, that there's no me, there's no you, there's just us. See, poetry allows us to strip away the things we hide behind on both sides of the equation, be you artist or audience, and see ourselves and then each other intimately, vulnerable, true. This is called Here, Home. This is a prayer for the silence that temporarily sat upon me and muted the music of my voice. Thank you for allowing me to miss these words and the weight of their bodies. It has taken the likes of heartbreak, hardship, hosannas, and a host of late-night conversations with God to get here, but friends, I'm here, home. Perched above my pencil, pregnant and pushing poems out into this world, leading lead onto the page, giving it structure, body, making it whole, giving it voice, making it sing. This is a prayer for language. Thank you for giving me purpose, giving me art, giving me the tools to turn poems into totems, chanting in the face of the sky. This is a prayer for me. Thank you for finally finding the courage to face and forgive yourself, for staring at your reflection in the bathroom mirror and apologizing for not loving yourself enough to be free, to liberate yourself from the clenched jaws of predators. Thank you for recognizing the strength of your beauty, that it is not cosmetic, but committed, consistent, that it is the kind of beauty that does not break, does not transform or change shape when the pressure comes. This is a prayer for redemption. Thank you for finding me, for rescuing me in my time of need, for salvaging me when I was lost and trapped between the shores of beauty and bedlam. Thank you for bringing me here, home, with the bevy of poems on my lips. Thank you. Thank you guys so much.